Gilded promises, the Mumbai skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of Naveen Shah's penthouse as he adjusted his Italian silk tie. At 35, he'd transformed a small tech startup into Shah Tech Innovations, a multinational corporation valued at billions. His engagement to Priya Malhotra, the brilliant architect whose sustainable designs had revolutionized urban development across Southeast Asia, had been declared a perfect match by the business press. "The reservation at Akash is for 8, he reminded her, checking his watch, a rare vintage Patek Philippe. "The investors will be there, and my parents." Priya stood before the mirror, her elegant emerald dress catching the light. At 32, her quiet confidence spoke of someone comfortable in her own achievements. She took a deep breath, one hand unconsciously moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Naveen, we need to talk before we go," she said, her voice steady, despite her racing heart. He glanced up, distracted by an incoming message on his phone. "Can it wait? The Singaporean investors are only in town tonight." "No," Priya said firmly. "It can't wait." She crossed the room and gently took his phone, setting it aside. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed felt tangible. Naveen's expression shifted from surprise to calculation to worry in rapid succession. "Are you sure?" he asked finally. "Yes. 10 weeks. Naveen ran a hand through his meticulously styled hair. "This complicates things. The wedding is in 3 weeks." "I know," Priya replied. "I'm not asking for anything to change. I just thought you should know." He paced the room, his thoughts clearly racing. "My mother will have concerns. The ceremony, the timing, appearances matter in our circles, Priya." "Appearances?" Her eyebrow arched slightly. "I thought we were beyond such considerations." "You don't understand. The Shah name carries expectations. My family's standing—" "I understand perfectly," Priya interrupted, her voice cooling. "I'm just surprised you do too." Before Naveen could respond, his phone rang again. "It's my father," he said, grabbing it. "We'll discuss this later. We can't be late." Across town, Indira Malhotra reviewed quarterly projections in her office at Malhotra Financial Holdings. At 61, she'd built her empire from nothing after being widowed at 30, turning a small inheritance into one of India's most respected financial institutions. She glanced at the single photo on her desk, Priya at her architecture school graduation, and smiled with quiet pride. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Malhotra, your daughter is calling." Indira immediately picked up. "Priya, aren't you supposed to be at dinner?" "Mom?" Priya's voice wavered slightly. "I told him." Indira straightened in her chair. "And? He's concerned about appearances, about what his family will think." Indira's fingers tightened on the phone. "I see. He says he loves me. But I can see he's worried about how it will look. A visibly pregnant bride in 3 weeks. And how do you feel?" Indira asked carefully. "Disappointed," Priya admitted. "I thought he would be happy, or at least supportive, not immediately worried about his family's reputation." "Come to my house tomorrow," Indira said. "We'll talk properly." After hanging up, Indira remained still, her mind calculating possibilities, like the financial strategist she was. She had watched Naveen Shah's meteoric rise with professional interest. She had evaluated his character when he began dating her daughter. Now she assessed him as a potential father to her grandchild. She opened her laptop and typed in a query. Shah Tech Innovations, current stock position, board composition, vulnerability points. As the data populated her screen, her expression hardened into determination. "Your move wasn't very impressive, Mr. Shah," she murmured to herself. "Now let's see mine." The fracture. The Oberoi Grand Hotel ballroom transformed into a vision of elegance and opulence for what society columns called the wedding of the decade. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over 800 guests, a carefully curated mix of Mumbai's elite international business partners and celebrities who'd flown in on private jets. White orchids and gold-trimmed decorations adorned every surface, while a renowned classical ensemble played softly in the background. Priya stood before the antique mirror in the bridal suite, her hands trembling slightly as her cousins adjusted her heavy lehenga. The custom Sabyasachi creation, with its intricate gold embroidery and delicate pearl work, had been designed to accommodate her 12-week pregnancy, though the slight curve of her stomach remained almost imperceptible. "You look like a goddess," whispered her best friend Tanvi, squeezing her hand. "Are you feeling all right?" Priya nodded, though unease had settled in her stomach over the past 3 weeks. Since her announcement, Naveen had grown distant, spending late nights at the office and having hushed phone conversations with his parents. When they did speak about the baby, his concerns invariably returned to timing and appearances. "He'll come around," Tanvi assured her, reading her expression. "Men just process these things differently." A knock at the door interrupted them. Indira Malhotra entered, resplendent in a midnight blue silk sari with subtle diamond accents. Her presence immediately commanded the room. "May I have a moment alone with my daughter?" she requested, her tone gentle but brooking no argument. When the room cleared, Indira approached Priya, taking both her hands. "You can still change your mind," she said quietly. Priya shook her head. "I love him, Mom, and he loves me. He's just struggling with the traditional expectations his family has." Indira studied her daughter's face. "Love should never make you feel diminished, Beta. Promise me something, hold on to your dignity today no matter what happens. It's worth more than any marriage." "You worry too much," Priya smiled, though something in her mother's intensity made her heart flutter with apprehension. The ceremony proceeded with meticulous precision. Naveen looked striking in his ivory sherwani, his face a perfect mask of joy as cameras flashed. His parents, Vikram and Sumitra Shah, watched with regal composure from their place of honor, though Sumitra's tight smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at Priya. It was during the reception, as champagne flowed and congratulations poured in, that the fracture occurred. Naveen and Priya stood receiving an important Japanese investor when Sumitra approached, bringing along the wife of India's finance minister. "Such a beautiful couple," the minister's wife remarked. "When might we expect the patter of little feet? No rush, of course. Enjoy your newlywed time first." An uncomfortable silence fell. Naveen's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Actually," he said with a forced laugh, "Priya has been so eager to start our family that she's already expecting." The statement itself wasn't the problem. It was his tone, the subtle shift of blame, the slight step away from her as he spoke. "How modern," the minister's wife replied, her surprise poorly concealed. "Yes," Sumitra added with a brittle smile. "Quite unexpected. In my day, we considered certain traditional sequences important, but times change, don't they?" Priya felt heat rising to her face as nearby conversations quieted. From across the room, she caught her mother's watchful gaze. "If you'll excuse us," Naveen said smoothly, taking Priya's elbow and steering her toward a quieter corner. Once they were alone, his pleasant expression collapsed. "Couldn't you have worn something less fitted?" he whispered harshly. "Everyone can tell." Priya stared at him, stunned. "The designer specifically adjusted it to be discreet." "Well, it's not enough. My mother is mortified. Do you know what this looks like? The timing is so obvious. Everyone will calculate and know you were pregnant before marriage." "And so what if they do?" Priya challenged, her voice low but intense. "We're adults, Naveen. We're financially secure. We're in love. Or at least I thought we were." "Of course I love you," he hissed. "But appearances matter in my world. My family has a certain standing. Your world, she interrupted. I thought I was marrying into a partnership, not a performance. Before he could respond, a cousin called him away for photographs with business associates. As he left, he whispered, "Just try to be less obvious for the rest of the evening. For me." Priya stood frozen, dignity barely intact, as the full weight of his words sank in. Across the room, through a gap in the crowd, she met her mother's eyes again. Indira's expression was calm, but Priya recognized the fierce calculation behind it, the same look her mother wore before executing a major business strategy. As the celebration continued around her, Priya made a decision. She straightened her shoulders, placed a protective hand over her stomach, and walked deliberately toward her mother, leaving behind the elaborate charade that had begun to crumble around her. Silent strategies. The morning after the wedding, while Priya slept in her childhood bedroom at the Malhotra estate, Indira sat in her home office, 3 computer screens arrayed before her. On one, ShawTech Innovations' complete financial history. On another, their corporate structure and major shareholders. On the third, a direct line to Raj Mehta, her most trusted financial analyst. The vulnerability is in their new quantum computing division, Raj explained through the video call. They've leveraged heavily to acquire the necessary talent and equipment. The division shows promise, but hasn't turned a profit yet. And the board composition? Indira asked, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she scanned documents. 12. Members. 4 are family: Naveen, his father Vikram, his uncle Deepak, and his cousin Arjun. The rest are a mix of early investors and industry experts. 2 seats are coming up for re-election next quarter. Indira nodded, making notes in her precise handwriting. And their relationship with Meridian Capital? Strained. Meridian provided significant funding 3 years ago, but feels ShawTech hasn't delivered the promised returns. Arrange a meeting with Meridian's chairman, Indira said, discreetly. For 3 weeks, while Naveen and Priya navigated an increasingly tense honeymoon in the Maldives, Indira worked methodically. She never mentioned her son-in-law's name to her staff, never indicated any personal motivation. To the outside world, her actions appeared to be nothing more than sound business strategy, Malhotra Financial expanding its technology portfolio. Her first move was subtle, purchasing a 3% stake in ShawTech through various subsidiaries, small enough to avoid triggering disclosure requirements. Next, she courted Meridian Capital's dissatisfaction, offering them a favorable exit from their ShawTech position, which Malhotra Financial promptly acquired. By the time Priya returned from her honeymoon, pale and withdrawn, Indira had secured nearly 12% of ShawTech and established back-channel communications with 3 board members who had grown concerned about Naveen's leadership decisions. The apartment feels empty, Priya admitted, over tea in her mother's sunlit garden. Naveen has been at the office until midnight every day since we returned. He says there's a crisis brewing with some investors. Indira sipped her Darjeeling, keeping her expression neutral. And how are you feeling? Physically fine. The morning sickness is better. Priya hesitated. But I'm wondering if I've made a terrible mistake, Mom. He's not the man I thought he was. People reveal themselves under pressure, Indira replied carefully. What will you do? I don't know yet. I want to give him a chance to adjust to everything, but Priya's hand drifted to her now visible bump. I won't have my child grow up feeling like an embarrassment. Indira reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. Stay here for a while. The city air isn't good for the pregnancy anyway. That evening, Indira made her boldest move yet. She contacted Vikram Shah directly, requesting a private meeting regarding matters of mutual financial interest. They met at a discreet club in South Mumbai, where Indira laid out her concerns about ShawTech's quantum computing strategy. With all due respect, Mr. Shah, she said, her tone professionally cordial. The division is hemorrhaging capital with no clear timeline to profitability. As a significant shareholder now, I'm proposing a restructuring. Vikram's bushy eyebrows rose. Significant shareholder? Since when? Since my firm acquired Meridian's position, along with several other strategic purchases, she replied smoothly. We currently control approximately 19%. The color drained from Vikram's face. This is highly irregular, Indira. We're family now? Indeed. Which is why I wanted to speak with you directly before bringing my concerns to the broader board. Her smile never wavered. I'm sure we can reach an agreement that benefits all parties. By month's end, Malhotra Financial had secured a voting agreement with 2 independent board members, giving Indira effective control over key decisions. Shawtek's stock began to fluctuate as rumors of a power struggle reached the market, and Naveen, still oblivious to the architect of his troubles, worked frantically to stabilize his company while barely noticing his wife had moved out. In her sanctuary at the Malhotra estate, Priya found unexpected peace. She resumed her architecturals, work remotely, focusing on sustainable housing projects she'd previously set aside. As her body changed with the advancing pregnancy, her spirit strengthened in her mother's protective shadow. Your grandfather built his first business with nothing but determination and integrity, Indira told her one evening as they walked through the garden. Those qualities run in your blood. Never forget that you come from people who build things to last. Priya nodded, wondering if her mother was speaking only of architecture or something much more fundamental. Power shifts. The Shawtek Innovations headquarters loomed over Mumbai's financial district, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun as Naveen Shah strode through the lobby. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, his usual immaculate appearance showing, subtle signs of strain, a slightly askew tie, the beginnings of a beard he hadn't had time to shave. For the 3rd time that week, he'd slept on the office couch, trying to contain what was quickly becoming an existential threat to his company. The board meeting has been moved up to 9, his assistant informed him, hurrying alongside with a tablet. And Ms. Malhotra's office called again. She insists on seeing the updated restructuring proposal before the vote. Which Ms. Malhotra? Naveen asked wearily, though he already knew the answer. Indira Malhotra, the assistant clarified. She said, and I quote, "Remind Mr. Shah that my patience, like my investment horizon, has limits." Naveen's jaw tightened. For weeks, he'd been scrambling to understand how his mother-in-law had accumulated such significant influence over his company. The connection had seemed coincidental at first. Malhotra Financial making strategic investments in tech wasn't unusual. But as her stake grew and board members began aligning with her vision, the pattern became unmistakable. More disturbing was Priya's absence. 6 weeks had passed since she'd moved back to her mother's estate, citing need for space and a healthier environment for the baby. His attempts to visit were met with polite but firm boundaries. She would see him only in neutral locations, always with the conversation steering away from reconciliation and toward practical arrangements for their child. The board meeting room fell silent as Naveen entered. 10 faces turned toward him, all present except for his father, who had conveniently taken ill, and the seat recently vacated by his cousin Arjun, who had resigned after a disagreement over the quantum computing division's future. Before we begin, Naveen said, trying to project confidence, I want to address the restructuring proposal. While I appreciate Ms. Malhotra's input, I believe my alternative plan better serves Shawtek's long-term interests. Actually, came a measured voice from the doorway, I think we should hear both proposals before making judgments. Indira Malhotra stood in the entrance, elegant in a charcoal business suit, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. Behind her stood Priya, her pregnancy now prominently visible at 5 months, dressed in a simple but elegant maternity dress that made no attempt to conceal her condition. Naveen's expression flickered between shock and anger. "This is a closed board meeting." "As the representative of 26% of Shawtek's shares," Indira replied calmly, "I have every right to be here. And as for Priya, the board specifically requested her architectural expertise regarding the new campus design, which is item 7 on today's agenda." The meeting proceeded with excruciating civility. Indira presented her restructuring plan with precision and clarity, a vision that preserved Shawtek's core strengths while redirecting the troubled quantum computing division into a joint venture with more experienced partners. Her proposal projected a return to profitability 2 quarters sooner than Naveen's plan. When Priya's turn came, she displayed the same quiet competence, presenting designs for a sustainable corporate campus that would significantly reduce operational costs while enhancing employee satisfaction. As she spoke, several board members exchanged impressed glances. The vote, when it came, was decisive. Indira's restructuring plan was approved 8-2, with only Naveen and 1 loyal member dissenting. Worse, the board created a new executive oversight committee with Indira as chair, effectively limiting Naveen's autonomous decision-making power. As the meeting adjourned, Naveen cornered Priya in a quiet hallway. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice low and intense. "Some kind of elaborate revenge plot? Your mother is dismantling everything I've built." Priya regarded him steadily. "No, Naveen. She's saving what you built from your own poor decisions. The quantum division was bleeding money, and your pride wouldn't let you see it. And you? Moving out without warning, barely speaking to me for weeks? Is that your idea of marriage? Is public humiliation your idea of marriage?" she countered, her composure never wavering. "You made it abundantly clear that we," she placed a hand on her stomach, "were embarrassments to you. I needed space to decide if that's something I can live with." "I was under pressure," he insisted. "My parents, the social expectations." "And I'm under pressure too," she interrupted. "The pressure of carrying our child, the pressure of being belittled on what should have been the happiest day of my life, the pressure of realizing the man I married values appearances over people." Before he could respond, Indira approached them. "The investors from Frankfurt are waiting in the conference room, Naveen," she said smoothly. "As CEO, you should greet them." The emphasis on "as CEO" wasn't lost on him, a reminder that while she now controlled the board, she hadn't pushed for his removal. Yet. As he walked away, Naveen felt the ground shifting beneath him. His company, his marriage, his very identity, all transforming into something he no longer recognized or controlled. Foundations rebuilt. The monsoon rains lashed against the windows of Naveen's penthouse as he stood alone, watching lightning illuminate the Mumbai skyline. 4 months had passed since the board meeting that had altered the trajectory of Shawtek and his life. His phone buzzed with a message from Priya. "Baby shower tomorrow at 3. Your presence is welcome if you choose to come." He stared at the words, sensing the careful neutrality behind them. Their communications had been increasingly civil lately, focused primarily on the pregnancy and occasional company matters, but the warmth, the intimacy they once shared, remained elusive. The truth had come slowly, painfully, like the peeling of a bandage from tender skin. First, the realization that Indira's corporate maneuvers, while ruthless, had actually stabilized Shawtek. The joint venture she'd orchestrated for the quantum computing division had begun showing promise, with better leadership and more realistic timelines. The company's stock had recovered, and analysts were cautiously optimistic. Then came the harder truth, that his obsession with appearance and family expectations had cost him what mattered most. His parents' disappointment when Priya moved out had been cutting. "You couldn't keep your wife happy even until the baby arrived?" his mother had asked. "What will people say?" The irony wasn't lost on him. The very social judgment he'd feared had manifested anyway, but for entirely different reasons. The baby shower was held at a boutique hotel's garden pavilion, with colorful umbrellas protecting guests from occasional drizzle. Naveen arrived precisely on time, bearing a gift he'd selected himself rather than delegating to an assistant. A collection of architecture books for children, with a note expressing his hope that their child would inherit Priya's creative vision. He spotted her immediately, radiant at 8 months pregnant, surrounded by friends and family. Indira stood nearby, her protective presence unwavering. When Priya saw him, she offered a small, genuine smile and gestured him over. "You came," she said simply. "I wouldn't miss it," he replied, suddenly aware of how much he meant it. Later, as guests mingled, Naveen found himself face to face with Indira near the dessert table. For a moment, neither spoke. "The Frankfurt partnership is proceeding well," he finally offered. "Your restructuring plan was prescient." Indira nodded, selecting a small pastry. "Business is rarely personal for me, Naveen, except when it involves my daughter's happiness." "I understand. That now." He hesitated. "You could have destroyed me completely, taken my position, my company." "To what end?" she asked, her gaze direct. "Vindictiveness creates nothing of value. I built my company on the principle that good business creates something worthwhile." "The question is, what are you building now?" Before he could answer, a commotion arose from across the garden. Priya had dropped a glass, her face contorted in surprise and discomfort. I think my water just broke," she announced, looking directly at Naveen. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, medical updates, and mounting anticipation. Naveen remained constantly present, holding Priya's hand through contractions, fetching ice chips, absorbing her occasional anger when the pain peaked. When she whispered her fears in a moment of vulnerability, he listened without trying to fix or minimize them. Rohan Malhotra Shah entered the world at 4:17 a.m., his lusty cries filling the delivery room. As the nurses cleaned and measured him, Naveen knelt beside Priya's bed, his composure finally breaking. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For caring more about what others thought than what you felt. For missing what matters." Priya, exhausted but glowing, studied his face. "We both have work to do," she said finally, "but this is a beginning." When Indira arrived at dawn, she found them together, Priya resting while Naveen held his son with awestruck reverence. She paused at the doorway, watching silently before making her presence known. "He has your eyes," she observed, approaching the bassinet. "And Priya's determination," Naveen replied, smiling as the infant gripped his finger. He wouldn't wait for the doctor, decided to arrive on his own schedule. A year later, Priya stood in the newly completed family wing of the Malhotra estate, making final adjustments to the nursery design. The space connected to both the main house, where Indira resided, and a separate structure where she and Naveen now lived, a physical manifestation of their evolving family dynamics. Shawtek had transformed as well. The restructured company now included a sustainable architecture division headed by Priya, focused on environmentally responsible corporate and public spaces. Naveen had gradually earned back the board's trust. Through humility and improved decision-making, though Indira remained a formidable presence at quarterly meetings. Most significantly, Naveen had found his voice apart from family expectations. When his mother suggested they host an elaborate first birthday celebration for Rohan to show everyone how well things turned out, he declined firmly. "Our family's happiness isn't for public consumption or validation," he told her. "That's a lesson I learned the hard way." On Rohan's birthday, the celebration was intimate. Just 3 generations gathered in the garden Priya had designed, where mango trees, provided shade, and the sound of running water from a small fountain created tranquility. As Naveen watched his son toddle unsteadily toward Indira's outstretched hands, he reflected on the foundations being built, not of concrete and steel, but of respect, honesty, and the courage to value substance over appearance. "What are you thinking about?" Priya asked, joining him. "That some structures need to fall before they can be rebuilt properly," he answered, taking her hand. "And that I'm grateful for the architect who showed me how."